Good morning, everybody. My name's Dr. Ant. I'm going to be talking through the new standard that's coming down the line to us called British Standards 30480 2025. That catchy title. What we're going to be doing is just explaining about how this is going to affect most of us in the workplace, and how that's going to have an impact on the workings with your employees and also their welfare as well. So let's just go straight on to opening up the presentation straight away. So here we go. So make sure that you can all see that. Okay. So the thing that's of real interest here is the British Standards Office, which is set up by UK government. This is the first time that ever there's been a worldwide standard for this. And what this standard is all about is about suicide prevention in the workplace and also dealing with the roots of mental health. But what we need to do is look at this from the perspective of what it means from the point of view as a business owner. We know we have to look after employees, but we also have to look after ourselves as a business as well, so we can look after our employees. And that's where we're really coming from with this and what it means for you as business owners. So first of all, we need to talk about the reality. And the reality is that, let's just move my box out of the way, here we go. 1 in 4 people at the moment experience mental health issues. I'm sure most of us have heard this statistic, that 1 in 4 of us are trying to deal with something at some point in time. But also, let's look at this, 51%. This is huge, isn't it? 51% of long-term workplace absence now is actually due to mental health. And that's quite a recent statistic. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's been increasing since 2024. And the other thing to bear in mind is what an impact that has on productivity. And if we look at this, is that long-term absence due to mental health issues can actually lose 57 and a half hours per employee per year. And when we think about that, that's huge, isn't it? That's like a month and a half of non-productivity from an employee point of view. And we also need to think about a very difficult subject to talk about, suicide and suicide prevention. But it's at the moment, it's the leading cause of death in men under 50. Again, that's the statistics back to 2023. I'm sure they will be slightly increased since then. But what does that really mean? So if we look at a small business, a normal small business of say 25 people, we're talking about 7 people in that team are going to be struggling with some mental health related issue every year. And if we look at how that affects the amount of time of days, that's 74 days of mental health related absence per year. And the thing to bear in mind here is that this isn't necessarily somebody else's problem. Because this is your team, this is your problem. And the reason why we're taking this approach is that if we can be accountable and take ownership of it, we can do something about it. And that's what we're here to do today. Now, all this stats and information that I'm sharing from you today, this is not information that we've produced at GoldTab or I produce independently. All this statistic and information is readily available on the British Standards website. You can Google the BS 304AC and it will take you straight to the British Standards website, and you will see all the exact same information that I'm presenting to you today. And the purpose of us today is to bring all this information down into bite sizes so that you can digest this and you can see where it's going and you can see what the impact could be on you, your team, and your business. So who am I? Why am I here? I mean, I've been in business far too long, over 40 years. My PhD is in business management mindset, and I'm also a qualified mental health first aid trainer. But the other thing that comes with this is also Mind, the charity Mind, Midkent Mind have appointed me as their first ever patron to advise their board of trustees all about mindset in the workplace. So I come from a very passionate, lived experience point of view of understanding what it's like to deal with personally mental health challenges in the workplace and have some empathy and understanding. So I'm not someone that's just read up on it. I'm actually someone that's lived through dealing with these kinds of experiences, which I think is really important that we understand that this is a real lived experience. Now, apologies, some of these pages are going to be a little bit text heavy. I mean, that's just really so that when you get the playback later on, when Katie does the recording, people can pause and take time to look at the stats and the numbers on the screens. So don't worry, I won't be expecting everybody to read through and gather all the information that's on the screen here. This is just so we've got a point of reference. But this is what I was saying just now, that this is the world's first ever global standard for suicide prevention in the workplace and workplace support. But I want to talk through what it actually is, because most companies look at this and look at it from a negative point of view that, oh, here's another load of compliance we have to comply with. Here's more rules and regulations. Here's something else we've got to do. And yes, it can be seen as that. But what we want to do is position it slightly differently. We want to say that actually, by looking at what these standards are, by following these standards, it puts you in the best place and your employees to be the most productive from a business point of view, from an ROI. So you're actually getting real return on looking after your employees. And actually, the failure of doing that, what consequences there could be from not doing it. So what British Standards does, this snappy title of BS 30480, it provides a practical framework, first of all, to prevent suicide and support mental health in the workplace. But it also focuses on really early intervention. It's not just a crisis response. It's not just like something's about to hit the fan, so we need to deal with it now. It's actually, hang on a minute, how can we prevent that stuff happening? What clear actionable steps can we have? Most of all, it demonstrates a duty of care. Now, why this currently matters is that this legislation has come in on the stepping stones of it's currently voluntary, but it will become mandatory. Just like, as we know in the workplace, when we have so many employees, it's mandatory we have to have first aid officers. It's going to become mandatory that we have to have mental health first aid officers. And following from that, it will become mandatory that you would need to be compliant with the BS 30480. So why should a business owner care? Well, your team, we all know and we say this, don't we? But let's put some real value in this, is that without the team, we are nothing as a business. The most important we have as a business owner is our teams. It's our teams of people that support us, because that then protects our business as well, doesn't it? So we need to also protect the business as well as the people. But there's also, of course, the legal duty. We need to make sure that there's also legislation under health and safety, that we need to make sure we have duty and care of looking after our people. And this BS 30480 just goes one step further, because not only does it bring in the requirements that you have to look after people, it goes more than that. And we'll get into this in a moment. It explains what you need to do to make sure you are doing what you need to do. And there's a very positive reason for doing that, which I'll get onto a little bit later on. But your team, I mean, at the end of the day, you know your people, right? And you will know if you see Bill or Mary or Sid or whoever, you will know when someone's struggling. You'll be able to pick it up. But the challenge that we found is that people know this, but they're thinking, well, what do I do? How do I approach it? How can I contact somebody without causing a problem or a bigger problem or affecting them or making them feel uncomfortable? And that's what this British Standards 30480 gives you. It provides the tools and the framework to actually be able to have that care in the way that you approach somebody to help them when you identify. But let's look at how it affects your business. One person leaving the business will cost £30,000. And that's just to replace them. That's not just their wages, but that's just to find somebody, your downtime, your consequences of not being around, you're covering them while they're non-productive, then the recruitment and then training people up. And this is the stats from CIPD. So it's £30,000 per employee when you lose somebody within the business, when they leave the business. But also we need to look at serious claims, because mental health claims are, we're going to get us onto this in a moment, but they're on the increase from an industrial tribunal point of view. And one serious claim is significant because the government have just released the cap. There used to be a cap of £77,000 on an industrial tribunal claim with roots in mental health. That's now uncapped. So it could be, if you're running a small business, that someone is successful in taking you to court for tribunal with an uncapped upper limit. That can actually ruin the business, not just for yourselves, but for the rest of the team as well, that it's no longer financially viable. And if we look at mental health absence, as we said earlier on, the amount of time downtime, that can affect, around £10,000 a year in loss. So it's really important we address that. And again, I just want to reiterate here that the British standards protects your business. It's not there just as a stick to beat you with. It's actually there to say, look, if you do this right, it's going to protect your business. And then moving on to your legal duty, the Health and Safety at Work Act, as I mentioned just now, 1974, it requires you to protect and your best interest of employees under mental health because industrial tribunals are expected to increase with their roots in mental health. And again, the British Standards is a way of demonstrating that you've taken care and responsibility to mitigate that risk. Now, look, again, these numbers, I don't expect you to take all these numbers in here, but this is just a summary of a typical 25-person business. And these are the sort of numbers that we're looking to cost you as a standard business in 1 year. So this is what we're actually losing, which we don't see on the bottom line, of course, because it's blurred into the rest of the business costs. But when we're dealing with like 74 absent days and one person being replaced because they decided to leave the business, and then we've got this invisible presenteeism where they're actually there, but they're not there. And the cost, we're looking at like 90 odd thousand pounds a year just to deal with people maybe showing up, but maybe not actually contributing because of their own state of mind and mental health. So there are four claims that could bust your business if we look at a negative point of view here. So in a situation, if you had an employee that wasn't being looked after, they believed, and they felt that you wasn't doing the best to support them, if they were to move to take you to industrial tribunal, bring you, the four things which they could issue a claim against is that unfair dismissal. If there was a situation where we couldn't resolve the problem with the person and they ended up being terminated, they could claim unfair dismissal or breach of duty of care. You didn't comply with the 1974 Act. And then there's all the health and safety violations, and then, of course, discrimination. I wasn't treated the same as everybody else. That's something else that we have to deal with nowadays. So these are four traps that are set down that we just need to be very careful of. But the reality is as well, according to ACAS, only 18 months ago, they're saying that almost a third of all employment tribunal cases now are rooted within mental health. But it's expected to rise, and small businesses are the most vulnerable. These are people like less than sort of 75 employees, which is, although it's a sizable business, according to the government, that's a small business. We as small business owners are the most vulnerable because we don't tend to have those HR and policies and protections in place. We just try and survive as a business, right? And of course, one case could wipe our business out. And the way to look at this is that 30480 is actually your legal protection. And what I mean by that is it's your way of ensuring and demonstrating you have been compliant because the 30480 actually requires 5 practical steps. And again, you can get this. This is not from us at GoldTap. This is from the British Standards Office. You can go and Google this and find this out. And what they're saying is, to comply with British Standards 30480, there's 5 key steps, and we've got the leadership commitment policy, the awareness and understanding, and the supporting pathways, intervention, and also postvention. So this is not a really complicated system to follow. They want to make sure it's practical and achievable because we don't want complication because that brings ambiguity, and then we're back to square one again. So let's talk about each one of these steps. What we're talking about with leadership commitment and policy is actually recognizing that suicide prevention is a workplace priority of us. I mean, I have another client I'm working with where, just to give an example, I won't give any names, they had a young chap in his mid-30s take his own life last autumn, last year. And that is obviously very sad for him and his family and his loved ones. But what also happened was the massive rollout of the ripple effect within the workplace. It then had a negative effect where the people then just were in a state of shock. They went into the, well, I could have, should have, would have mode. And they were then self-reflecting, which is also having an effect on their business because they weren't performing. And the whole company then had to go into reactive mode on the back foot, trying to deal with picking people up and holding people together. And that's a very small business that I work with. But the effect, as I say, the ripple effect is often silent until the tsunami hits us, and then we realize what it's really all about. And with the leadership commitment and policy, it's also about creating clear prevention policy and putting some resources to be allocated towards those policies as well. So it's not just a playing a tick service and saying, yeah, we will do this. It's actually doing something about it properly. What then comes as a second priority is awareness and understanding. What we're talking about here is actually training people to not only recognize the warning signs and to educate the team on mental health and destigmatizing those conversations, because a lot of the time, especially with, dare I say it, us blokes can be a little bit more like, yeah, whatever, man up, and all those kinds of expressions, which are just actually quite damaging in today's world. We just need to be a lot more aware and a lot more empathetic and sympathetic in dealing with people's feelings and emotions and motivations. The other thing that then the step three is actually having clear pathways, so clear routes to help. And this is the third of the five key pillars which the British Standard says that we need to have. And these clear routes are internal and external from suppliers. And then we also need the EAP and occupational health and helpline. So we need to make sure that it's easy to access, but above all, of course, confidential. Now, I know a lot of this stuff is stating the obvious, but the reason why I'm saying this is because the way that British Standards have approached this is to keep it really obvious, keep it really clean and really simple. And there's only five pillars to achieve this. And then also, actually, is like, I don't know if you've ever had this, anyone watching this call, but you see someone who's in a bit of a pickle and you think, how can I deal with this? How can I approach the person without making it a bigger pickle? And that's what this intervention preparation is about. It's actually about training managers to have those difficult conversations. And that's what we're doing here with Gold Tap training, with the mental health training, is developing mental health first aid officers within your companies to train people how to act, how to make that approach, how to talk to somebody without having those problems, and how to have confidence and competence in being able to do that. And understanding that there are clear escalation protocols. If we see someone who's in a pickle, what should we do? If we're thinking they're a danger to themselves or somebody else, what should we do? And that's really important that we have that clearly outlined to create those really clean and clear response procedures. And then, of course, it's not just about pre and during looking after people. And I like to use the phrase in a pickle, because it softens it down a little bit, doesn't it? But when people are in a pickle, we need to make sure they don't get back to that place. And we need to look at post-vention planning. We need to look at what happens afterwards. Now, how to keep them within, and how to make sure they feel looked after and supported and cared for from the communication, but also learning improvement for all parties involved as well. So that's the five key steps that the British standards are pushing down the line. As I mentioned just now, the leadership, awareness, support, intervention, and then the post-vention planning as well. So you can see there that that's it. It's not hugely complicated. There are obviously a lot more details within each of those practical steps, which I haven't gone into today so far because I don't want to overwhelm you. The reason for today is to give you a taste of what's coming down the line. And then with Katie and the team here at GoldTap, we can then work alongside you to show you and demonstrate the solutions of enabling this new standard to become part of your business. It typically takes around 2 to 3 weeks to bring this into fruition. So first of all, we need to do like an evaluation and a gap analysis. So we need to understand what's your current procedures and policies at the moment, because I'm sure that most of us, especially with ISO standards, will have something in place already, but it's actually looking at that, looking at the gaps, seeing where we need to tighten up our belt on certain areas. And then following that gap analysis, where we identify what's needed to be done, GoldTap, we can deliver that training. Now, we also work with other partnerships and other deliverables to help with that gap analysis and to help identify and deliver the policies and procedures as well. So this is an ongoing process. And then week 3 is actually embedding that. You can either take that on, or we can help guide you how to embed those policies and procedures within the workplace. And the type of stuff that you get from a policies and documentation point of view is, first of all, to be compliant with this is a suicide prevention policy. And that really is all the devil in the detail of explaining about what we need to do, what the strategies are, how to deal with someone, what your crisis call out points are, and your policies and procedures, but also making sure that the managers, that people that are dealing one-to-one with people, that they've got toolkits, they can understand what the warning signs may be and their conversation framework and how to escalate things, and having enabling them with confidence to be able to approach and deal with this. I think it's really important. Confidence is the key thing which I train with people is that they can have the confidence to be able to approach somebody to talk about if they're in a bit of a pickle. Because I think when someone approaches us with confidence and clarity to help us, we seek reassurance in that. Whereas if someone comes to us that really doesn't feel confident and is kind of stuttering and fumbling all over the place, it kind of recreates that in us as the receiver, doesn't it? So we need that confident, clear service. It's just like an ambulance crew turn up. When the paramedic turns up to help somebody, they're very confident, aren't they? They're very calm, clear, and confident. And that's what we need. I often think if somebody turned up as a paramedic, if I was in a bit of a, in a physical trauma, and someone turned up in a complete panic and didn't know how to deal with it and was completely dithering and hesitating, that would kind of put me on edge too. So that's why I reaffirm that confidence is one of the most important things that we need to ensure that people who are on the front line dealing with this and identifying and looking at the warning signs are fully confident in their capabilities. But we need to also make sure that they have the supporting visual resources with the posters and sign pointing, and also be able to implement that. But that really comes out the gap analysis, what I mentioned earlier on. So what does it typically cost? Well, to bring everything together, we're looking at a total cost there. You can see the cost breakdown. And again, you can digest these numbers afterwards when Katie sends over it afterwards. But we're looking at a total cost of about £12,000 for a 25-person business. So that sounds like a lot of money, first of all. But do you remember when we looked back at earlier on, it was a £90,000 cost at the moment. So at the moment, it's costing small businesses £90,000 in lost revenue, lost production at the moment. Whereas for an initial cost of 12,000, you can see the ROI is very positive, and the ROI normally tends to repay itself within the first 3 months of productivity. Let's just go on to the next one. So looking at this year on ROI, oh, here we go. This is what I said just now. Typical 25-person business, your payback period is normally 3 to 6 months. By 3 months, you normally recovered your investment into this. But by month 6, you're now on the flip side. You're now moved into positive. And by year end, you're in a positive. So we need to look at this. It's like this isn't a burden being hit over over the head, saying, "Oh, you've got to do this now as a business." It's not also all about cost. It's now going to cost you as a business. Sure, we need to make some change. We need to put some implementation in place. We need to get some policies and procedures and gap analysis. We need to do some work. But the whole idea of this is to build your business as a stronger, more resilient business because your people are also stronger and more resilient. And the plus side, it goes straight to your bottom line as well, which can only be a good thing. So let's talk about what small business owners actually care about. These are typical questions that have come up in previous webinars that I've run. And will it help me keep your people? Absolutely. If we can stop someone leaving because of stress and overwhelm and burnout, we know that's the stat. That's proven 30 grand straight to the bottom line just by stopping somebody leaving and having to replace that person. But also, of course, it does demonstrate that duty of care from a legal point of view because it reduces the claim risk. We need to think about that if we were taken to that point of industrial tribunal. I know we shouldn't think about it like this, but there is a true fact. When we're in that tribunal situation, we want to protect our own business from being claimed against. So we need to be able to demonstrate our duty and care. And with the 30480, as long as we comply with that and can demonstrate that, that's our kind of get out of jail card. That is the proof that we've done the right thing. We're looking after our people the right way. For whatever's happened, this claim's come forward, but we can demonstrate we've done everything that we should do within the British Standards 30480. So it means that we've done what we need to do, what we should do, and we're demonstrating that. It's also not complicated. We're talking about 2 to 3 weeks to get this in place. And then the embedding, as I mentioned earlier on. And the total cost, as I said, it's around £10,000 to £12,000. It really does depend on what you've already got in place. If you've already got some policies and procedures in place, then it's just going to be a gap analysis. And that's something that the Katie and the team can sort out here for you. And this last question is like, it says here, will my team be buy-in? But I actually think the other way. Will my team be cynical? Are they going to really see value in this? Are they going to see it as, oh yeah, this is just another tick box? No, this is about real support, not just talk. And I can't emphasize that enough. This is not just about another compliance thing. This is not about, oh, well, we're doing it because we have to. No, this is real. This is about genuinely looking after your people, to look after your business, to look after you, so we can then look after the rest of the people in the business. There's some free resources. So again, you can Google this. There's two ways of approaching this. You can do it yourself. You can go to the BSI Group website, which is the British Standards Government website. You've got the link there. They're genuinely useful, actually. There's some very interesting information in there. You will see that all the stats and the figures which I've produced today have all come from their website. So everything's in there and use them. But if you do want full compliance and expert advice, then come to us. That's what we do. Come to us and we'll show you and we'll navigate you through this. So it's done for you as opposed to done DIY. Um, Common questions, is it mandatory? Not yet, but it's going to be coming down the line. And if you've already got mental health policies, great, fantastic. This builds on those existing policies. And the very fast closing message here is that this isn't a compliance burden for small businesses. What we're talking about here is a business investment that pays for itself, and we can help protect your team and your business. Now, I'm going to leave this next slide up here. If you want to connect with me, that's a QR link to my LinkedIn. My contact details there as well. You've obviously got gold taps training businesses, but again, for the purpose of the replay, when we send this out, there's also all the reference sources as well. So I'm just going to leave that screen there. So if somebody wants to pick up on all the stats that we're quoting earlier on and where they come from, these are all the stats there. We've kept that nice and easy today. So we've gone through that. Look at that, 29 minutes, 30 minutes almost, we said. We're there for today. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ping them over in the chat.